Hi, I'm Mark Whitwell, and I'm from New Zealand, born in New Zealand of English descent, right? My mother and father are scholarly, professional people. Their ancestors came from England. So I was born in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Very influenced by the Maori indigenous culture from New Zealand, because 20% of New Zealanders are indigenous people. And then I moved to Fiji, and I have my yoga retreat center in Fiji on the island of Taveuni. So I like to say I'm Fijian, but I'm from New Zealand and I live in America. I'm a US citizen. I live in Berkeley, California. You know, I have to pay great gratitude to the Beatles, because the Beatles in my early life went to Rishikesh, and they started speaking frankly about their personal interest in Eastern philosophy and meditation and so forth. So as a young person, that was fascinating to me because, you know, as we know, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds and the Kinks, they blew our minds, you know. So I was a young man with my heart and mind wide open by the wings of music. And so then their personal journey got me interested in this matter. So I can say I went off to India directly because of that influence. I got very bored in the suburbs of New Zealand and bored with, you know, what the suburban life was dishing up, and, you know, getting ready for my career at university and so forth. And I dropped out of university and went to India. Found yoga. You know, from New Zealand, it's a fairly easy trip to get to India. You go through Bali and you go through Singapore. Then there's a short flight or a ship that goes Singapore to Madras, now known as Chennai. So I ended up as a young man, like 21 years old, walking through the streets of Madras and meeting yogis and swamis really early on. I toured around India of all the spiritual sites and met many famous gurus and not famous gurus and yogis of all descriptions. I did that for a year and a half in my very early days. In the course of that trip, I ended up at Tiruvannamalai, the ashram of Ramana Maharishi, and it touched me deeply. I felt the great silence of Arunachala, the mountain, and the great depth of who Ramana is the source of life itself in human form, the power of creation as a human being. There I met Douglas Rowstone, a dear friend of mine, who was studying at the time with Krishnamacharya and Desikachar. Now, Douglas had got there through the influence of J. Krishnamurti, who was in dear friendship with Krishnamacharya and Desikachar, our teachers. So it was just under the influence of J. Krishnamurti, Ramana Maharishi, I ended up in the home of Krishnamacharya studying yoga with Krishnamacharya and his son Desikachar. I definitely had to prove myself worthy of their instruction. They didn't give it out casually, and they would give it out when there was a sincere interest from students. And, you know, their method of teaching was one-to-one. You go on, you know, for an hour, 2-3 times a week with your teacher. And there was definitely, you know, you had to be interested. My teacher would say to me, "Is there anything, Mark? Is there something that you want to bring forth? Is there an inquiry?" And I would have to have my own questions, my own investigation going. Otherwise, there would be nothing to teach. They had a point of view that you don't force teachings on people. You only confuse them with too much information. And that teaching must come from a genuine need, a genuine inquiry from the student, and then a teaching arises. Otherwise, there's no need for a teaching. So this was their deeply held philosophical view about teaching. There's something beautiful I remember. Desikachar would say to me, "Well, is there anything today, or shall we gossip?" Or, you know, or, "Is there anything today, Mark, or shall we go for a walk on the beach?" Now, there's something really very touching about that, because in fact, he was actually offering friendship, you know, like, let's gossip. let's not get serious about teaching. There was an ultimate point of view from the Krishnamurtis that there is no need for a teaching. You know, life itself is doing an amazing job at, you know, here we are as life itself, you know. Life knows what to do. Where's the need for a teaching? One clever man, the boyfriend of Jane Campion, who I introduced to U.G. Krishnamurti, he read that statement, there is no need for a teaching, and he said, now there's a teaching. That's a teaching, that there is no need for a teaching. You are life itself. You're taken care of by the intelligence and power of this life. So that was an underpinning point of view, you know, that they lived by, and that yoga is merely participation in this life that we are. It's not an attempt to get into an alternate state or a change of state. There is no requirement for that. Well, you know, I was quite, you know, I've been through my education to some degree, and by the way, I went back to New Zealand and finished degrees, and so I went back to university. My father was an educator, so I sort of had that in me to, you know, get qualified in university and so forth. So I did that. So I had, you know, a modern, eclectic education in me. So when I went back to India, I could tell what was fakery, what was the spiritual business. And, you know, not all of that comes out of India is that useful. You know, a lot of it is sort of religious cultism and just yoga business, you know. Krishnamacharya would say that the biggest business in India is spirituality, you know, not oil, not motor vehicles. It's spirituality. So you have to sort it out. And so I was quite discriminating with my Western mind about what was useful and what wasn't useful. And when I met Krishnamacharya and Desikachar, I knew there was intelligence there and sensitivities. They were talking about adapting yoga to individual needs so that it was truly useful for each person. No dogmatism, no one size fits all. And especially due to the Krishnamurtis, J and U.G. Krishnamurti, they were, both Krishnamacharya and Desikachar were very informed by those gentlemen who were extraordinary people. So there was no forced agenda. There was an intelligent teaching going down that I was very privileged to get. I mean, I was influenced by other great teachers. One in particular was Swami Muktananda and Ganesh Puri, and he was amazing. He was a Shakti yogi who had been at the feet of Nityananda for 20 years in a very humble relationship before Nityananda died, and then Muktananda became who he was as a teacher. And I was deeply fascinated by Muktananda, in love with Muktananda, you could say. But what I saw, that there was a lack of teaching around that humble man. There was Hindu orthodoxy and so forth, but there was certain aspects of the yogic life that were not there, and Krishnamacharya completely fulfilled that for me, and I sort of meshed the two together. I'd take these long 3-day train rides between Madras and Bombay in those days, Chennai and Mumbai, to meet with Muktananda. And the yoga that I was receiving from Krishnamacharya was extremely helpful in that extraordinary relationship with Muktananda. So that's one of my stories. I represent a collaboration between Muktananda and Krishnamacharya. And it was very interesting to me that just before Muktananda's death, he had sought out Krishnamacharya because he wanted to meet him for yogic reasons and for health reasons. You know, Muktananda was in his elderly life and he had some illness. And he wanted to meet Krishnamacharya. And an appointment had been set up, actually. It was kind of extraordinary that these two great gentlemen were to meet. but Muktananda died before the meeting actually occurred. So I sort of feel in my own life, I've been influenced by various teachers, and I represent that collaboration. And, definitely the yoga that Krishnamacharya brought forth from the great tradition is necessary to practice in the company of somebody such as Muktananda, or any teacher relationship, any great guru relationship, including the whole realm of Christianity, which is a great guru relationship. It's a relationship with the power of creation that resides in human form. And from Krishnamacharya's scholarship, a yoga is necessary in that relationship. Yoga, intimacy with all ordinary conditions. He said, yoga is what you do in response to the teacher's grace or the guru's grace. It's what you do in response to inspiration. And he would say, if you've been inspired by something great, such as Christ or any other great guru, or anything that inspires you, you might read a great book and go, wow, he would say, now yoga is what you do as a practical response to that inspiration. And he said, if you don't have that practical response, the inspiration can make matters worse, because you've been inspired and you have the great feeling, the great vision, but then your usual life drones on, and you have no way of actualizing what you've felt. And yoga is the way, the practical means by which you actualize the great inspirations that are there in human culture. It's so important. Yoga was always there. It's sort of like it was the mother's milk of spirituality. It was even the very primal source by which people had religious experience. It was yogic experience that then got written down to text and became doctrine, and doctrine stripped away yoga as the practical means, and so all you had was text, was meaning, and priesthood without yoga, and that is so problematic. So Krishnamacharya is saying there must be a yoga as the practical means by which we can actualize the great understandings of wisdom culture. That's how important yoga is in the world today. He would say Christians need yoga, Muslims need yoga, Buddhists need yoga. A great statement from Krishnamacharya. The Buddha was a yogi. He was at one with the natural state. He was at one with all ordinary conditions. He wasn't in conflict with ordinary conditions, like you say, I'm the result of my mother-father's collaboration, that they brought me forth. And definitely, I spent years with Muktananda and many decades with Krishnamacharya. So I am the result of that, the meetings with those fine people. And, I always say, Krishnamacharya, he was no yoga entrepreneur. He wasn't a yoga businessman. He never had a website. He was a scholar. He was serious about his own culture. He loved the learning. He was a great Vedic scholar or religious scholar and a yogi of his own traditions, and he loved it, and so he brought it forth. So I was definitely the beneficiary of that, and especially his son Desikachar, who was really the interpreter of Krishnamacharya, because he had a Western background and he was very influenced by the Krishnamurtis. He'd been in Switzerland a lot as a young man, so he understood Western mind. So Desikachar was the perfect person to, I say, he is the Shakti of Krishnamacharya. He made Krishnamacharya visible, you see. Because Krishnamacharya was a very, earnest Brahmin male. He never left India. He couldn't speak English. So he belonged in another time. He died at 101 years old in 1989. It's of our own time, He's our own teacher of our own time. But he was a very elderly person from a culture that is very hard to understand, That Desikachar brought that through, And I thank Desikachar so much for that extraordinary work and his brilliance at doing that for us all, you know. And I say, you know, with the influence of both Krishnamurtis, those four gentlemen, Krishnamacharya, his son Desikachar, J. Krishnamurti and U.G. Krishnamurti, they've changed the course of yoga, not exactly changed, but they've made yoga available in very clear ways, in very intelligent ways for the rest of time. They were great people. You know, Krishnamacharya, the teacher of the teachers, the teacher of all the modern day teachers. So if you're involved in yoga today in any way in the studio system of America, your teacher is Krishnamacharya, teacher of B.K.S. Iyengar and K. Patabi Joyce. So yeah, my life is a representation of these influences. It's certainly of Muktananda and Krishnamacharya. That is how yoga is the practical means to respond to the power that comes through extraordinary yogis and gurus like Christ. And also the collaboration between U.G. Krishnamurti and Krishnamacharya. These people were very much in my life, in my DNA. So I do teach what they taught me. Yeah. You have to know what your questions are. And just let me say this, you know, I play music and I learn music. And when I just noticed this the other day, in my adaptation to trying to understand a piece of music, I have to know what my question is. I have to go into it, like, what's this, how's this working? You know, how do I get through this scale and this rhythmic line? You know, what is it? And I have to look at it and know what I need to know to be able to finally do it. And that's how it is in life. You have to know what you need to know so you can do your life, so you can get your life right, you know. So you have to know what your questions are. It's based on a need. You know, what do you really need? UG would always say that, what do you need? Or then he'd say, what do you want, actually? What do you really want? What do you really want is the question. And the teacher is there to help you actualize what you really want. Now, you might not know what you really want, and the teacher's job is to help you find out what you really want, to help you with that inquiry, to know what direction you want to go in life, in all areas, you know, in terms of career and intimate relationship and place where you live, all these things we have to sort out. And of course, that is the definition of yoga. Chitta vritti nirodha is to go in the direction of choice with continuity. And then the mind will settle, right? But if you don't know your direction and you're oscillating between directions, your mind will be full of vritti, full of fluctuations. So it's a very interesting definition of yoga, is to go in your chosen direction with continuity is yoga. It is not to reduce the mind's fluctuations. This is a result of yoga, but yoga is to know where you want to go and go in it. Body, breath, and relationship in that order. Thank you for that beautiful sutra. And this is the whole point of yoga. And the question is, anyway, what is the heart? And the definition is the heart is where all opposites arise, the origin of arising, and the literal human body arising. It arises as the heart, one cell of life that came into existence through the perfect collaboration of male-female, which created the mother and father force, the nurturing force of life, synchronistically created you. That is the heart. From the heart grew the spine and the whole head, and then the mind evolved as an amazing refinement of the nervous system. This mind that is the body's mechanism of navigation, of experiencing, of communicating life to life is the mind. So I always say the mind is beautiful. There's no problem about the mind, you know. And yoga is about this participation in the opposites. We say by the union of opposites, inhale with exhale mainly, in the union of opposites we know the source of opposites. We know the heart, right? And that is the main methodology of yoga, is the union of opposites within and without. Then the heart or source is felt, right? From the heart arises the nurturing, the pranas, the life energy. So this is a little different point of view, or a different practice from many practitioners, especially the popularity around meditation and the idea of mindfulness, whereas you look at the content of the mind until you settle as the one who is aware of the mind, and the mind's fluctuations then have less significance to you until the idea is that one day they finally go away. So in yoga we do not struggle with the mind, trying to get victory over the mind's fluctuations. What we do in yoga is all about intimacy. It's about the embrace of life, the union with what we actually are, That's what it is. We are this union with life itself. So it's about this inhale, exhale, then we know the source of the mind, which is the heart. The mind settles to its source. Without the source, without life, there is no mind. So the mind links to the life, and then we're all right. So that's the meaning of that sutra. I was once with Desikachar. I took a group of people from New Zealand, and he asked, who's teaching yoga here? And half the room went up, hands went up. And then he said, who talks to other people about yoga? And then all the hands went up. And he said, you're all teachers too. So what happens is, as soon as you start practicing yoga, you start communicating yoga. That's what we do as human beings. We communicate what we know and what we love. And I'm always asking, please find a few friendly friends, some tame friends who might like to know about this, and try teaching them. And your families, please start with your family and communicate what you love. And of course, many people find that when they start practicing at home, their families automatically take it up. So this is the great tradition of yoga, is, spouse to spouse, we teach our own, the ones who are near and dear to us. So I say yoga teaching is sort of like mother's milk. It's right at the grassroots. Everybody can teach. Everybody should teach. I would say that that happened to me, that because I've been in India and been with Desikachar, I just automatically started to communicate, and it happened informally at first, and then formally. Sooner or later there was a room in Auckland, New Zealand, and I started hosting classes. I remember I had this full-time job. I was this corporate dude in a suit, and I was running Telecom New Zealand. I had a career in telecommunications, and I was, I had a big job, and I would wear the suit and had the company car and credit card and very busy. But so I had this yoga studio, and I wasn't, at a time there, it seemed like I had no time to practice. And on one of my trips to India, Desikachar and I sat down. He said, well, when can you practice? And we worked it out. And the time was finishing work, 6 o'clock, class started at 7, 10 minutes to get to the studio, 20 minutes to have a practice. So I re-engaged my daily practice through my teacher's influence and help. And we have to do that as teachers. You have to work out with your student, like, okay, where can you practice? Do you have a space in your house? What time of the day can you actually do it? And pin each other down to actual practice. This is what the teacher does. So anyway, I started doing that spontaneously. And at some point, I had to get out of my disguise of the suit and the corporate job, because I was actually a yogi. I'd been in India all those years. See, I knew I had this, this treasure that, you know, anyone, as far as I'm concerned, anyone can run Telecom New Zealand. Not anyone, but, you know, but not many people had the education that I had in the meetings with yogis that I had. And I just knew that I had to start doing something about it. I mean, I had been a lot with Yuji Krishnamurti, who was Krishnamacharya's dear friend, you know. And Yuji had studied with Krishnamacharya, and Yuji kind of like held Krishnamacharya to the fire of his own teaching. And that is that there is a right yoga for every person. It is not a reaching for an alternate state or some future possibility. Yoga is each person's direct embrace of life itself, reality itself, the power of this cosmos that is arising as pure intelligence and beauty is yoga. So Krishnamacharya, who'd still been, you know, under the influence of Brahman male seeking for a future possibility called God, you know, was still in that imposition on the life of the pranas. And along came Yuji, and Krishnamacharya so loved Yuji Krishnamurti. They had very different lifestyles, and they were different people, but they had deep, deep respect for each other. So this is what happened in that meeting, is that Krishnamurti sort of realigned or removed that Brahman male toxicity of seeking for a future possibility, and put it into this world as direct embrace of reality itself. You know, that God is not somewhere else. You know, here is God. What could do? Who or what could create even this embodiment? You know, it's beyond understanding. So God is not elsewhere. You know, it is only participation in this that we are, and that is yoga. And that's, you know, Yuji Krishnamurti nailed that, and Krishnamacharya loved him for doing it. And Yuji Krishnamurti loved Krishnamacharya for being the sincere and honest man that he was. He wouldn't pretend to know stuff that he didn't know, and so they had a mutual respect. So me in the midst of that, so, oh my God, I get it, thanks. I practiced it myself, would teach it to a lot of people, and I could see the transformation that would occur to people when they started practicing with that clarity and with those accurate principles that Krishnamacharya brought forth from the great tradition, and refined and made intelligent by the Krishnamurtis, you know. So I held that. So what was I going to do? You know, stay on the beach or run a telephone company or something? No. So we had to go out there and teach. We created an organization called the Heart of Yoga, based on Desikachar's book that I did for him, The Heart of Yoga, and put that into the world. And now we have a worldwide group of practitioners who are spreading this teaching, and that's happening more and more. I'm very happy about that. Well, let me say that, you know, at a certain point, it was in the early 90s, I did some research about what was happening with yoga, and I came to the US and I went to Europe and so forth, and I was stunned to find out that what Krishnamacharya had taught through a few of his students, such as Desikachar and A.G. Mohan and Srivatsa Ramaswamy, just a handful of people, it was not going into what the world was popularizing as yoga. And there are reasons for that we can go into. Mainly that the teachers that became very famous left Krishnamacharya as young men, young boys really, and they didn't have the opportunity to stay on with him and get a yoga education. So what was popularized around the world was very westernized by, you know, the fitness industry and the fashion industry and so forth, and the whole Western psychology of struggle towards a future possibility, you know. So the teachings of the great tradition was simply not there. And I went to Desikachar one year. Krishnamacharya had died not so many years before in 89, it's about 92, and I said, "Sir, do you realize that your father's teaching is it's just not there?" It was a little bit shocking. And he said, "Mark, please, if you can do something about it, please." And I can publish a book. And we published a book called The Heart of Yoga, which is sort of like now the Bible of yoga. And I'm very pleased that many, many teacher training groups use that book. And it's been published in many languages. So that's essentially the heart of yoga. And it's gone in around the world. And of course, I recommend it, The teachings are quite precise and very adaptable to every situation. The subtitle is Developing a Personal Practice. And when I took that book back to Desikachar to see for the first time in 95, he shed tears because he told me, my father didn't see the result of his work in the world. But he said, but now he does. And so I was very happy and very proud of that book because it is an important text that the principles are there. And I am saying in this world, the world of yoga, that these principles from Krishnamacharya must be included in all the popular styles that develop from him. They simply belong in there. These basic principles that we've been talking about, they belong in Iyengar practice. They belong in Bikram. They belong in the great tradition. See, Krishnamacharya didn't represent a style of yoga. He was a scholar of the vast tradition of yoga and brought through the essential principles that make yoga direct participation in reality itself. Direct collaboration of the opposites in your own embodiment within and without. He brought that through with great clarity, refined by Krishnamurti and so forth. And I'm saying that, please, and now that Desikachar died not very long ago, and our great teachers like Iyengar and Patabi have gone, it's like it's up to us now. We are the yogis. We're the ones that are alive and holding this, and we must work to bring the great tradition to the world, the yoga world as it is now. Just help people include the principles from the great tradition in the yoga that has been popularized, and help them become actual yogis in this matter. And not burn themselves out with exaggerated efforts and hurt the body and ruin the subtle biochemistries of the body through exaggeration, which is what happens, and help people to have an actual practice, and then to bring yoga way beyond the yoga demographic as it is now and bring it into the world, Bring it to the Middle East, bring it to Africa, because yoga is adaptable to all cultures. When he said yoga must be given according to the needs of each person, according to body type, age, health, and cultural background. So now it must be, it's like the mother's milk of human life to be intimate with your own life. It's the first human right for everybody, no matter who they are, no matter what their race, nationality, no matter what their religious background is or non-religious background. They have a right to claim their own life, to be intimate with their own life, their body and breath and relatedness, this body's relatedness to life, including sex, the great power of life itself. Everybody deserves that, So that's what we do as the Heart of Yoga. We're a non-profit foundation, 501c3 in the US. The government recognizes us, as doing this public work. And we have a great non-profit called Urban Family Foundation. And their mission was the stated mission was to create skills for urban living worldwide to help people survive and be well and be happy in the cities of this world. I mean, it's a beautiful idea. And these folk who have now become friends because they found this yoga, what they found out is that as soon as you educate a yoga teacher and you put them back into their community, whether that's Beirut or Jerusalem or Sudan or LA, what happens is that there's a family, urban family, forms around that teacher. And the skills of urban living come through that family. In India, it's called a Sangha, the group of practitioners. And they found this happening, and we have a special focus on the Middle East to do that. And we're saying at a grassroots level, give intimacy with life to all people and give the skills to local people. Because Krishnamacharya would always say that the best teacher is someone from your own culture, not someone of another culture. So we're training, Islamic people and Jewish Orthodox people and Christian people from all different countries and backgrounds. And of course, it's very helpful. And so Urban Family, very grateful to them helping us get this out. They sponsor, we bring people into our teacher training, and then we monitor their progress and help them establish themselves as yoga teachers in their local community. We're also doing that in the urban America. People who have disadvantaged backgrounds in urban America. We're bringing people into our training, teacher training at places like Kripalu and Esselen, and they're sponsored too. So we find that we can very quickly give the skills of yoga and the skills of teaching to people, and they go back and create their own teacher training. It gives them income and it gives them family, and I'm so excited the way that's rolling out. In various countries in the world, Japan, China, Germany, Switzerland, Greece, Israel, Lebanon, ones come to the top of mind. We have people, Heart of Yoga people, who are out there doing this work. And I was just on Skype. My friend Jay Brown goes to Japan. I tried to do less travel these days, and so he's in Japan doing a teacher training, and I come in by Skype, and they put a projector up, and there's like 30 people in the room, and it's like I'm in the room with them. And these 30 people are from all over Japan, and now we have like 300 teachers through Japan, and the whole thing's got a rhythm of its own and evolving without us necessarily going there. It's like established, this is what we want to do in this world, establish real yoga for real people in all different societies, and that's what we do as the Heart of Yoga. I invite people to participate in any way they can, It's frightening for me to see, how much money is spent on these elections and so forth, like people, if they would help bring intimacy, human rights, even in the midst of the dreadful political situations that we have around the world. Everywhere, these people begging, thirsty for information. And I see it as the function of us Western democracies to do that service, The Dharma traveled from India to the West through the great work of people like Ram Dass and so forth. It's here now in the US. So it's our role to distribute that. And that's why I thank you for this very present time, this work that you're doing to get this information out to the world. My advice to everybody out there who's kind enough to listen to this conversation is to establish your own practice at home, in your own bedroom or your living room, depending on your socioeconomic status. If you've got a space next to your bed, start a practice. Work out some basic movement. Moving and breathing is the whole body. And this whole thing is predicated on you having your yoga, the yoga that's right for you. And just, we can't get a personal meeting and a workshop or something, that's fine. Just try by this, cyber means to get the principles of the body movement is the breath movement. Inhale from above, exhale from below. Strength that is receiving. Let the breath envelop the movement. Just move and breathe. Have a good breathe as your whole body, and then have a good rest in the way that we've shown on this series. And just try, and don't try too hard. I said, do your yoga actually and naturally and non-obsessively. Yeah, non-obsessively, on a daily basis. Just like you don't shower obsessively, or some people do. But, you don't say, wow, I've showered every day this week. You just shower, Or you don't say, oh, I'm terrible, I didn't shower today, or I haven't showered for 2 days. You shower the next day. And you get yoga as very ordinary practice like that. This is my main advice to you. Forget philosophy. Forget trying to meditate. Forget trying to improve yourself in some arbitrary way. Do your yoga. Not just any yoga, the yoga that's right for you. That is the merge of the inhale with the exhale, right? That merge. As Krishna said to Arjuna on the battlefield, "O Arjuna, sacrifice the inhale to the exhale. Sacrifice the exhale to the inhale. Be a yogi, O Arjuna." And if you just do that, it links the mind to the whole body, to who and what you are, which is life itself, the great mystery of life itself. The secrets of the universe are in us, as us. It enables you to rest in a deep and interesting way. And things happen if you do your yoga practice. So this is my main advice, that everybody start a non-obsessive daily practice and enjoy your life. One great teacher said, his words were, "You are here to enjoy yourself." It's profound. Yeah, so that's my main advice. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you.